Hello, I am David W. Parker. This is Programming Today I Learned, episode 6 in the Svelte series. As I mentioned previously, we're not going to go too deep into Tailwind, but in this episode, we're going to do a couple minor things. I'll have a little mini rant about Tailwind, and then we'll move on with our lives. I'll do a different Tailwind series, or just live coding or whatever, to build out some buttons and build out a bunch of different stuff, and we could just use those ad hoc at that time. So without further ado, let's jump into the code. So we're only going to change a few files here: the layout, the main homepage, sign up, and sign in page. First things first, let's go ahead and look at the app. So this is it. We got a couple of URLs here: sign in, sign up. I have the index page, looks the same as the sign in. That's it. We have the primary background set of 100, and we're taking it to the height of the screen. We'll change this a little bit later, but for now, I'm just setting everything blue. We have the index page here. This is all actual unnecessary code here since we moved the API out of that, but we basically just have this nav in here, and the same thing in the sign in as well as sign up. We will extract that out into its own component and components later. But for now, I just threw it in there and then copy pasted it over just to show you guys. And we'll probably put it up here in the layout. We'll put nav and yada, yada, yada. But anyway, without further ado, let's take a look. So the main thing is we have this nav in here. And in the nav, we want to go ahead and make it full width. We'll probably go ahead and put it on the right-hand side eventually. But for now, we'll just have it pretty wide, give it a little bit of margin spacing, and then have the items within it be flex. So that way they can have a nice little spacing around them. And then, of course, there's only one item right now, but we'll add more. So the next thing to note is we have these two buttons that are actually A-links that look like buttons. And we have a little bit of padding around them, rounded. So they're each rounded when you're hovering it over it. We've removed the focus and outline. So when they're selected, they don't have the built-in one from the browser. And then, the text changes to white, which is the focus text white, as well as the background primary changes. And then we have the hover as well. So we have both the hover state match the focus state. That's it for those two buttons. Let's go ahead and look at the form, and then I'll rant on Tailwind just a little bit. So sign in is the same. Like I said, we'll extract this out. Sign up, we have this form. So the form, again, is going to be in a nice little wrapper here. And we basically want to center everything so it looks nice. The nice thing is Tailwind provides all of these utility classes with like SM for small and large to have. Depending on the size of your browser here or whatever, we can go ahead and state what size we're going to be adding. The form itself, we're going to set a max width on it because we don't want it to fill out the entire div that it's within. Because if we were to remove that, that would look ugly. So we're going to have a nice little form here. We're going to use this negative margin trick to have these overlap just a little bit. So that way you don't look like it has a double line, or we don't have to remove the border on one side and it looks very smooth. The top input here has, you'll see the rounded T medium. So that's the rounded on the top medium. And then the bottom is rounded bottom B medium as well. We're going to again remove the focus outline and provide a focus ring of primary as well as focus border of primary. And that gives us this nice little blue hint here. You can't really see it super well, but let's go over to listen at it and you can see what more I mean. So you could see here's this like little reddish outline. And if I was to change my color theme, you could see that little border outline changes with it. So it's a nice way to remove the default one from the browser. You also need to have this focus outline none on there as well. And then finally, the button that's down here is very similar to the buttons or links that are above, giving it a transparent border here. Same thing with the focus. We want it to have a focus with the different colors. And I've added a couple things here I'm not going to show quite yet, but like disabled opacity. So when we're submitting it, we'll disable it eventually. Stuff like that. and as well as just having a nice hover background, whether it's active or not. Very, very simple CSS stuff. So I promised a little mini rant on Tailwind. This is actually a mini rant on why I like Tailwind. Some people vehemently don't like it, and I can understand why. I don't think it's the best tool for every job, but I think it's a great tool for most jobs. And so I understand if you're looking at something like these buttons here, and you're freaking out that there's all these classes, rather than just one class called button. And so what you could do is just two ways to solve that. One is to go ahead and create another class called button and use the @apply to apply all of these within it. And that's a very simple way to do it. It's kind of an anti-pattern-ish in Tailwind. You can explore that in a little more detail. The other way is to extrapolate this entire link into its own component, and that's what we'll probably end up doing. So if we have, all of these classes are the same from here to here, with the exception of this margin left spacer for the register. So what we would do is just extrapolate this whole thing into a component, pass in as props the href as the copy for this button, and then maybe any additional classes, and then just import and use that instead. And of course, it'll still output this information, but it'll be in one place to manage, and that's kind of nice. The other thing people don't like is they assume that because you're using all these classes, you don't know CSS. Now let's just think about that for a second and how that's 100% wrong. If you take something like Bootstrap and you add just button and then button primary, you don't have a clue what is going into that CSS unless you inspect it. As opposed to if you have any kind of knowledge of the Tailwind API, you know that each class the Tailwind provides is a single or maybe at max two different CSS styles being applied to it. This one is two, and we know it because it's PX as opposed to PL for P left or PR for P right. PY, of course, being top and bottom. This makes you think about each and every single style that you're going to add to your button, to your dropdown, to your whatever. And if you want to see what it looks like without it, you can immediately, remove that, ability. So you say, hey, this is what it's like without font medium. It makes you think about exactly what is going into your button, into your class. And you have to learn CSS to know what's available, as opposed to just blanket adding button and button primary. You have to think about what's going to be in my button. What are the classes? What are the styles? So personally, I found Tailwind to be fantastic in the regards that you're going to learn a lot more CSS by using Tailwind than you ever would if you used something that doesn't have these utility type classes. The last thing, and then I'll show, and I've kind of discussed this previously, I believe, or if I haven't, we'll just talk about it now anyway, is it's tiny. So if we go ahead and look at our CSS here, I'm actually loading blue and then purple, and they're loading for my service workers. So I'm going to go ahead and disable my cache here. So all of my core is 5.6 kilobytes on Listen Addict here, and my entire color file is 1.6 kilobytes for the entire application. And I have a lot of pages here. I have a lot of admin pages too, and there's quite a bit going into this. So it's interesting how tiny you can have the output be compared to some of these other big frameworks. So long story short, I like it. I don't think it's for everyone. I don't think it's for every application, but it works in a lot of cases, and it'll help expand your knowledge. Without further ado, we're going to end this episode. I will have another episode or series probably where I just make some Tailwind components, and we'll just make some, and maybe it'll be a longer screencast to show. Maybe I'll live code. I don't know. And with that, we'll talk to you guys later. Thank you. Subscribe, like. Bye.